Hi Lorna, how are you? Hi Manpreet. Hi Sim. Hi Harpreet, how are you guys? Hi Repeat, how are you? I'm just gonna wait for a couple more seconds before I start. Hi Ange. Hi Shelley. Oops. Hi Sonia. Right, I hope everybody's well and you guys managed to enjoy the sun today. The boys didn't actually end up going in the paddling pool. They played lots in the garden, but we didn't manage to get them in the paddling pool today because both Preetham and I were really busy with work. But I hope you guys managed to enjoy it. I think it's meant to be warm for the rest of the week as well. So lots of sunshine, not great for those with hay fever like me. But in light of Mental Health Awareness Week, I thought that it would be a really good idea for me to share the whole reason why I started this page, given I think about 3/4 of the people that follow us started following the journey after we had Sargent. So there might be loads of you that have assumed that the depression started once we had Sargent, which is not the case. The whole reason that I started this page was actually because I had postnatal depression with Arjun. So before I start, I just want to put it out there, I'm not an expert, I'm not a professional, I have not got it all sussed out, I'm still on this journey. I think this is a forever journey. I don't think you're fixed and then, you can go on with life. I think it's a forever kind of evolving process as you go through different things in life, and it's all about learning how to cope and finding the tools and techniques that work for you. It's been quite a roller coaster for me. It hasn't been a linear journey. There's been lots of highs, lots of lows, and it continues to be that way, despite what you may think from social media, as much as I do try and keep it real. Secondly, I'm really aware that there's lots of pregnant mums that are following me. I don't want to scare anyone. I don't want to plant any seeds. Everybody's labor is very different. Everybody's pregnancy is very different. And everybody's experience as a mum is very different. So please bear that in mind. Both of my pregnancies were really, really different. Both of my labors were really different. And obviously, both of my experience with both the boys was completely different, though I did go through depression for different reasons. So when I first started the blog, it was very random. Arjun was about 4 or 5 months old, I think. And I remember just messaging my sister saying, I think I'm just going to write and I'm just going to start a blog. Like, I'm just going to write. I think that might make me feel better. And she was like, okay, go for it. And she was actually the one that suggested the name Baby Brain Memoirs. So I created my first post, and I think the main one was my hormonal roller coaster straight after birth. And I couldn't believe the number of women that messaged me within the first couple of days, weeks, saying we feel exactly the same. We just thought it was us. We didn't think that anybody else felt like this, and we don't feel that we could speak about it so openly. And I was quite taken aback by how many people felt the same way that I felt. And I guess for me, I've been brought up in quite an open house. Though I think the older generation don't fully understand the whole mental health thing. They were never sort of suppressive. They weren't anti us airing how we felt, and they had no reservations to me starting the blog, which was really nice. And one thing that I learned was that, talking about mental health and postnatal depression is still quite a taboo within the South Asian community, and in general. We seem to have this belief that, we've got to portray ourselves as, we're really strong, we've got our shit together, we know what we're doing, we're really confident, and, it can put a lot of pressure on you. And a lot of that for me was self-inflicted. You know, I felt like I had to have my shit together, and I am that person that loves to be in control and loves to just have everything organized and sorted. And that wasn't quite how it panned out for me. So what I learned was it's not about the destination. Despite us all going through different journeys and going through different experiences in life, it's about the journey. It's about the experiences we share, the emotions that we share through those experiences. So although I've gone on to have a child with additional needs, some of those feelings and experiences that I've had are so relatable to people that have gone through different things, despite it being a different situation. And I think that's what brings us together. And that's why writing on the blog and, you know, doing things like Baby Brain Tea and Talk events has been so beautiful for all those women to come together and to have something in common, even though there's still so many differences, if that makes sense. Anyway, so I'm going to speak about when I fell pregnant with Arjun, and how I felt afterwards, and some of the things that I learned through that journey, and in hindsight, you know, what I could have done more of, and also how I am today. So I'm not going to really talk about when we had Sargent, because I just don't want to talk about that today. I want to talk about how it was becoming a first-time mum for me. So our pregnancy was quite plain sailing. I mean, I was high risk because I have hypertension, so I was high risk of preeclampsia, so I was always consultant-led care, and my consultant was amazing. You know, during the pregnancy, I was always really worried, but I was worried that something would happen, but it wasn't, I think I was still very naive as to what could potentially happen. I kind of went in there, you know, bushy-tailed. I was really excited, you know, doing all the things that new mums-to-be do, you know, dressing my bump, buying all the baby stuff, planning out how life would be. I literally had labelled every single drawer. I'd organised all the cupboards. I was so prepared, and in my head, I had it all sussed. And I know, speaking to other mums, you know, I'm not alone. You know, we have this perception that, right, you know, I've got it all sorted. This is how it's going to be. I'm going to have this routine, and my baby is, you know, going to do X, Y, Z. I'm going to breastfeed. I'm just going to do everything. I'm going to nail this because it's me and I can totally do this. So that's how I went in to my pregnancy. And despite having my worries about, you know, something going wrong, because I was consultant-led care, I had frequent appointments. I was visiting daycare twice a week to be monitored, so that kind of kept that anxiety at bay, which was good. Because I was at high risk of preeclampsia, my consultant decided that it would be better for me to be induced at 39 weeks. So I went in, literally, it was quite hilarious, actually. I went in as though I was going on holiday. I was really excited. I was one of those people that never feared labour, really weirdly. I don't know why. I think it's because in my head, it's like, okay, you've got this baby in your tummy and somehow this baby has to come out. So there's no point in stressing about it. There's no point in working yourself up over it. Just deal with it. Every minute that you go through is a minute closer to you meeting your baby. So I was quite positive. I wasn't stressed. My birth plan was very loose because, you know, my consultant said to me, don't be too stringent with your plans, just be easygoing, trust us, we want to look after you, and we will only do what's best for you. So I was like, okay, fine, whatever. But I did have a list of certain things that I wanted when my baby was born. Things like, you know, prayers to be played, so Bart, I wanted the gurra to be placed on my baby's wrist and things like that. And I wanted skin to skin, I wanted to breastfeed, but even with breastfeeding, I think I had put breastfeeding actually, which led to a few issues afterwards. But anyway, so I went in for induction, and I'm not going to go into what happened with my labour, but basically I had a failed induction. It's not very common. For some reason, my body contracts, but it doesn't dilate. I had the same thing with Sargent, and I wasn't induced. I went into natural labour, but I don't know what happens. There's some sort of communication breakdown. So I ended up having an 84-hour labour, and in the end, it resulted in an emergency C-section. And the last 48 hours of those 84, I was nil by mouth, so I hadn't eaten, because they were preparing me just in case I needed to be, I think it was for the drip actually. That's why I was nil by mouth, and just in case I needed to have a C-section. As soon as Arjun was born, I remember them saying, congratulations. I mean, when we went in for the C-section, it was literally 30 seconds and he was out of me. And it was quite quick, and it was quite chaotic. It was like, we need to get the baby out, we need to get the baby out. His heart rate had dropped. But I was so exhausted and out of it, I didn't really know what was going on. So they took him out and they said, congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Basan, you've had a little boy. And as they placed him on me, I kind of turned my head and I said to them, I don't feel well. And that was it. And I said, take the baby off me. So I literally didn't even touch him. I didn't even really, he was literally put on me, and I was just kind of, out of it. And I started puking and then I fainted. And I didn't end up actually meeting Arjun properly until he was 5 hours old. I woke up, I came round after 5 hours, and I don't know if that was the trigger. I don't know what was the trigger, but that obviously knocked my confidence. So I remember waking up in the recovery room and waking up to the view of Pritham just gazing down at his son in his little cot. And I just remember looking at him for a few seconds because I was a bit like, well, where are we? What is going on? And I could just feel the love from Pritham. He had tears in his eyes and he was just besotted with this little human being that was in this cot. And when he saw me wake up, he said, Harps, let me pass him to you. And he put him on me, and I just felt nothing. I literally felt nothing. I just felt blank. I knew that I loved this human because he lived inside me and he'd grown inside me. He was a part of me, but I felt blank. I felt disconnected. I felt the opposite to what I thought I would feel. I thought I would be elated. I thought I'd feel joy. I thought I'd feel excitement. And I just felt empty. And I just felt just empty. I don't even know what other word to use to describe it. And I remember just looking at him and thinking, how are you the person that grew inside me? Like, you just feel like a stranger. I don't feel like I know you. I just couldn't connect. I couldn't quite piece together the fact that this was the baby that grew inside me. There was just some sort of blank. And it was really tough. 1 second, sorry. What's wrong? Okay. That's okay. So it was a really strange and odd feeling. And I remember feeling like those 5 hours that Pritham had with him, perhaps they'd been able to develop a lifetime bond. And, I kind of felt like I wasn't a part of that I'd missed out on those 5 hours. I hadn't really gotten to do the skin-to-skin contact. Would he even know who I was? I hadn't managed to breastfeed him because I obviously wasn't in a fit state. So Pritham had bottle fed him. Again, I felt like I'd kind of failed him. Like, would he know who I am? Had I given him the best start in life? Would he thrive in life because he hadn't had my breast milk? It just I felt gutted. I felt absolutely gutted. I felt like everything that I'd planned just hadn't happened. And despite me trying so hard to give birth naturally, I felt gutted that I ended up having a C-section. I was in absolute agony and I just felt low. And when I look back at the first picture of me, Pritham and Arjun, I can see the sadness in my eyes. I can see, it takes me back to how I felt then. I was in so much pain and I was exhausted. I hadn't eaten. I felt really poorly and I just didn't feel very confident. I didn't feel like this baby knew who I was. I didn't feel like I was equipped to be his mum. I didn't feel like I'd be able to look after him. I just had no confidence, and I almost didn't recognize myself because the Harps, you know, a few days before had planned everything, had labeled everything, had this amazing routine in place, and I was just so up for everything, and I just couldn't quite understand what had happened. So I had to stay in hospital for a few nights because of the C-section, and just because I wasn't feeling too good. And the midwives were absolutely incredible. You know, they'd come and help during the night, breathe them. I think he stayed with me for the first night, and then the second night I said to him, look, just go home, go to sleep, because you're going to need to kind of have the energy to help out. I tried to breastfeed while I was in the hospital. I didn't change a single nappy. My sisters were there with us throughout the whole thing. They changed Arjun's nappies before I did. You know, everybody was feeding him. I was trying to breastfeed him. I was kind of struggling with it a little bit. The midwives would help during the night. They would literally take over. They would change his nappy. They would wind him. They would do whatever I needed them to do. They seemed to just get it. They knew that I needed that support. And I was so grateful to have that support from them, because I don't know what I would have done otherwise. I remember feeling really, really nervous to come home. I just felt really scared about not having that safe space of the hospital, just not having that support, just not having, you know, people to just kind of help me constantly. I was terrified that my sisters would kind of, you know, eventually obviously have to go back to their normal life. I was scared of what life would be like after Breatham went back to work. How would I cope? How would I know what to do? It was really strange, because I think people assume that, you know, I've had my low days because Sarjan has Down syndrome, and actually that's not true, because I had Arjun who had no complications, and I still felt so sad. I felt so empty, and I didn't understand why. My sisters stayed with us for about 2 weeks, I think it was. They took it in turns. Everyone just seemed to get that I really needed them without me even saying it. I wasn't vocal. I was probably quite quiet. I was just very quiet and almost observing everything that was going on around me. It felt like I was watching my life as opposed to it being my life. And it just felt so strange. Breatham was really hands-on with Arjun, and they just developed this beautiful bond. And that was one thing that was good about him helping with the bottle. It meant that they were developing some sort of a bond, and I admired it. I wanted to be like that with my son. I wanted to feel the way Breatham felt. I wanted to be really confident and just, you know, I remember watching Breatham change Arjun's clothes while Arjun stayed asleep, and me thinking, wow, I wouldn't even be able to do that with him being awake, let alone him sleeping and, you know, not waking up. I was just in awe, and I was so grateful to all the help and support that I had, but I just felt really odd. In a way, I was relying on it, but at the same time, it was probably allowing me to feel even more insecure and, you know, probably more underconfident, because I was just watching other people be so capable with my son, and I was taking a further step back. I remember Breatham was really, really emotional. He was, I think for the first few days, he cried at the sight of me, and he cried at the sight of Arjun. He said that when I fainted, literally the doctors and nurses were running up and down because my blood pressure dropped and my heart rate dropped, and then they took Arjun from him because his temperature dropped, and he was literally like, I'm going to lose both or one of them, and he was really terrified. And he kind of channeled that energy and just being so loving and caring towards both of us. Like, he was so hands-on with Arjun, and he was also so hands-on with me. So after that first C-section, I wasn't able to walk. I was literally confined to my bed. I couldn't really hunch over to try and change a nappy. I couldn't do much. I was just I felt like an invalid. I just couldn't do anything. So he would literally take me to the toilet. He would take me to have a shower. And I was so grateful, but it just made me feel like absolute rubbish. I felt awful. I felt ugly. I felt like a burden. I just felt really guilty. This wasn't the way it was supposed to be. It was really strange because on the outside, I felt like I had it all. I had, a beautiful baby. I had the love and support of the family. I had a doting husband. I had my sisters. I had everything. On paper, I had absolutely everything. And I felt so bad that I still felt like this, but I just couldn't shake it off. I just could not shake it off. I couldn't just snap out of it. As much as I tried to say to myself, just get on with it, I just couldn't. And I think the physical impact that the C-section had on me, I don't think it was just the C-section, I think it was also the exhaustion. It just kind of crippled me, and it just lowered my mood even further. I felt guilty. My mum was coming over every day to cook me fresh food. I just felt like I was a burden on her. I felt like, she'd had a heart attack a few years ago and I was making her run up and down. I felt like, I was a burden to breed them. We had this newborn baby, and as much as he was doing for him, he was also doing the same for me. I felt like a burden on my sisters. I felt like they almost didn't have a choice but to do what they were doing. And I just felt really guilty, and I really belittled myself. I really beat myself up over it. And that's something that I still do today, and that's something that I really need to work on. I felt like a failure. I felt like, I'd heard comments about, a C-section's the easy way out, and a C-section's not an easy way out. No way of delivering your baby is the easy way out. A natural labor, it's hard, as you're going through it. But, afterwards, the recovery, from what I've heard, is a little bit easier than if you've had a C-section, which is probably a little bit more straightforward in terms of delivering, but it's, the recovery is a little bit longer. Everybody's labor is different, and nobody's is worse or better or harder or easier. But I just felt like I really wanted to give birth naturally, and it just didn't happen, and I was so gutted. But the one thing that gave me comfort was that I tried till the very end, and the reason that we had to go for the C-section was because, his heart rate dropped, and it wasn't really in my control. I felt like a failure because I wasn't able to look after my newborn child. It really impacted me thinking about, is this child going to think that I'm not his mum? Is he going to know that I'm his mum? Is he going to know that I love him even though I'm struggling to take care of him? Why am I rejecting him? Was I rejecting him? What was wrong with me? Why was I feeling this way? I didn't understand why I was feeling what I was feeling. I didn't want to feel this way, but I couldn't shake it. I felt really awful about the whole skin to skin thing, that I wasn't able to give him that kind of touch. I felt really guilty because I was the one that had carried this human, and when he entered this big wide world and had to kind of, experience all the new smells, all the new people, all the new voices, all the new temperatures, I wasn't there. It wasn't me that gave him comfort. I wasn't there to protect him. And as his mother, I felt like it should have been me that was doing that for him. And I wasn't. And I really believed that it would impact our relationship forever, and that I'd never have that relationship with him, because I didn't breastfeed him for very long. I didn't have the skin to skin. I wasn't there during the first few hours. And I genuinely believed that that was our relationship done. I almost writ it off. I almost gave up at that time. I remember saying to the twins, he's more comfortable with you guys. You guys do what you need to do with him. I'm not comfortable, and he's not going to take comfort in me, and he's going to cry when he's with me. I felt so low in confidence. I just felt the simplest task just seemed like the greatest challenge for me. I didn't change Arjun's first nappy until he was 2 weeks old, I just couldn't do it. I don't know why, I just couldn't do it. I couldn't muster up the courage or the energy or anything to just change his nappy. Literally, all I was doing for him was trying to breastfeed him and sometimes, bottle feeding him and sometimes having a cuddle with him. I felt really sorry for myself, if I'm completely honest. I'm not ashamed to admit that. I felt really sorry for myself in a little bit of a, oh, you're a bit pathetic, Hops, kind of way, which is not a nice thing, but I just felt a bit like, I feel really sorry for you, Hops, because I know you really want this, but it's just not happening for you. But actually, you are in control. But at that time, I felt like I wasn't in control. I just felt a whole wave of sadness. I felt really lonely. Despite having a room full of people, I just felt like I was all alone, that nobody got it. I just felt like I was looking in on my life, but it wasn't my life. I can't really describe it properly, but if you've ever experienced something similar, you'll understand what I'm saying. I had so many irrational thoughts of something going horribly wrong. When Breatham did finally go back to work, I remember, actually just before he went back to work, I remember one day he got up and he said to me, the twins weren't with us anymore. He said, oh, I'm going to the gym. And it was about week 3 by now, and he had extended his paternity leave by an extra 2 weeks to be there with me. And I was just like, what are you talking about? Like, how can you even think about the gym when I'm in this state? Like, how can you do that to me? Anyway, he went and I cried and I cried and I cried. And I thought, how could you do that to me? You've been so loving and affectionate towards me. How could you just get up? And how could the gym be more important to you than me? And I remember thinking, shit, I'm by myself with this baby now. Like, what do I do? And as soon as he got to the gym, he texted me saying, Hops, I've done this on purpose because I want you to see that you absolutely are capable, like you're his mum and you will be able to do it. And actually that was pretty thoughtful of Breatham to do something like that. And I remember taking Arjun out of his cot and holding him and just standing in front of the mirror and looking at our reflection and thinking, I'm your mum, like I gave birth to you, I'm your mum, like I know you better than anyone and you know me better than anyone, no matter how many people have fed you, have cuddled you, have changed your nappy. I'm your mum. You recognize my heartbeat. That's one thing that I have that nobody else can give you. You recognize the comforting sound of my heartbeat. And I remember thinking, this is something that I can give you that nobody else can, that comfort. And I remember just cuddling him and holding him and almost rejoicing in that fact, in that realization of knowing that this is something that is only ours, that only we share. And although that day was really difficult, those couple of hours was really strange, it was probably quite an eye-opener for me. It was a really important thing that Breatham enabled me to do, to just have that alone time with him, because I hadn't been alone with him at all until this point. I felt really reliant on people still, so even though my confidence slowly grew, I still felt like he was safer with other people. I didn't feel like I could take him out by myself. I remember when Breatham was going back to work, I was just terrified. I just thought, how on earth am I supposed to look after this human being all by myself? How am I going to know what his different cries mean? I didn't know what his different cries meant. They were just a cry to me. They were just a noise to me. How am I going to know if he's not feeling well? What am I supposed to do with him? I don't want to take him out. What if I forget his nappy bag? What if he has a tantrum? What if he cries? What if we go out? I used to have really dark, irrational thoughts. What if I take him for a walk and somebody kidnaps him? What if I go in the garden with him and I don't know, how am I supposed to do it? How am I supposed to take out a picnic blanket and then take out the food and then take him out. Like, what order am I supposed to do that in? How am I supposed to do this? Everything felt so overwhelming. I made everything a problem. Everything was a huge challenge. Nothing was straightforward. And I just didn't know how I was going to do it. For those of you that have followed from the beginning, you'll know some of the challenges I had. You know, the thought of taking him shopping was just completely out of the question. That was not something that was going to happen anytime soon. Taking him to the park, that wasn't something that was going to happen anytime soon. Even small things like going in the garden, it was just massive. And I've documented all of this on the blog. You know, every time I did achieve one of those milestones, it was such a huge thing for me. And I wrote about it, and I put it there as a memory for me to reflect back on. I felt this deep love for Breatham. I felt like I loved him in a different way. I felt like he was just perfect, and I felt imperfect compared to him. I just felt like I couldn't give him what he was giving me, and I felt gutted. I felt like I was letting him down as well. I felt like he was probably thinking, oh my gosh, Harps, you know, come on, get over it now, get on with it, you know, what's wrong with her? Why is she not? You know, I felt, you know, this, and I don't know if this is a South Asian female thing. I don't know what it is. I don't know where this comes from, because my parents have never really put pressure on us, so I don't feel like it's come from there. I don't know where it's come from, this whole thing about holding your shit together and this pressure of being perfect and just, you know, nailing everything. I felt really overwhelmed with gratitude. I just felt so grateful for, you know, for my parents, for Breatham, for the twins, for just everyone, for my friends, for being patient with me. I didn't understand what was causing the way I was feeling. Was it, you know, the physical exhaustion? Was it my hormones? Was it just a general deep-rooted lack of confidence? Was it a lack of perspective? Was it an unrealistic perspective? Was it because I had assumed I'd be able to control everything? And, you know, this is something that I hear so much from other mums, that, you know, we had it all sussed out. We sorted everything out. We knew what our routine was going to be like. You know, we were going to do X, Y, Z, and it was going to be brilliant when this baby arrived. And the bit that every single first mum forgets is that there's going to actually be a human being in the equation, and there's going to be all these emotions, and no matter how much you think you can control it, it doesn't always pan out that way. There are certain things that will not go the way that you had anticipated or that you had planned. And it's something that I hear so much, and it's something that I learned from my first pregnancy, but even that lesson didn't prepare me for my second. But having gone through all of that, and just feeling like I was in this constant, sad, low, lonely space, and just being so scared of doing anything alone, I slowly but surely challenged myself with the right support. You know, as Arjun developed, and as he started smiling, and as he started, you know, coming into his own, developing more of a personality, that connection really grew. And I think that's when I kind of realized that, you know, I'd sit there when he was a newborn thinking, is this my life? Like, is this what it's going to be like forever? Like, is this how I'm going to always feel? And I think it was after about 3 months, when he started to kind of come into his own, I started feeling more of a connection with him. And I loved him. I always loved him, but I just felt empty. And you guys know today, he is my absolute rock. He is my strength. He has saved me from literally taking my life. If it wasn't for Arjun, I don't know if I would still be here. He has been my knight in shining armor. And there's a blog post called that, where I wrote about how he guided me, and he took my hand without even knowing it, and he walked me through some of my challenges. And I want to send that message out to you guys to say that, you know, if you ever did feel that you're struggling to bond with your baby in the beginning, or you don't feel like how you imagined you would feel, take it from me, that didn't impact my relationship with Arjun in the long term, because he's closer to me now than he probably is to Preetham. I mean, they've got their own relationship, but he's mummy's boy through and through. He's got this deep connection, and that whole heartbeat thing, and, you know, that reminder of I carried him, and, you know, I remind myself of that all the time. When he's feeling stressed, or when I'm feeling stressed, I will cuddle the boys really tight, and I'll place our hearts on top of each other, and I'll just say, Arjun, just stop for 2 minutes, just listen to mummy's heart. And it just makes me feel like I'm so connected, and nothing can come in between that. So some of the things based on my own personal experience that I want to share with you guys that I learned were, firstly, don't be afraid to ask for help. I know as a first-time mum, I had a slight chip on my shoulder, and again, speaking to loads of you, I know that I'm not alone. We have this thing where we want to do it our way, you know, we want to do things with our baby, and we want to do things in our house, and we just want to give off this perception that we can manage it all, and it's really okay if you need a little bit of help. That, you know, friends and family are there, you know. I'm fortunate, I had my friends and family. I had my mum that I was really comfortable with. My mum, she didn't overstep the mark with the baby. She was more comfortable with making sure that her baby was okay. So she'd feed me, you know, she'd make sure I was okay. She'd pray for me. The twins were there to help with Arjun and Sarjan. I felt safer with the twins than I did, you know, anyone else other than Preetham. I get it that it's, you know, the first time you're going to become a mum, you want to do things your way, it's exciting, and it's your baby. But you don't have to necessarily ask for help with the baby. You can ask for help with things like the housework, with cooking, with things like that, you know, little things that will help your day just feel a little bit easier. I literally welcome the home-cooked meals. I welcomed my sisters sometimes staying over to do the night shift so that Preetham and I could have a break. My sister Harv in particular, she was just amazing. Sometimes Arjun would wake up, you know, 6-7 times during the night, and she would literally be up before we even heard him. She was incredible. And Guv as well, during the day, she was brilliant. The second one's a really important one. Don't be afraid to open up to your health visitor. One of my biggest concerns and fears was that Arjun was going to get taken away from me, that if social services cottoned on to how I was feeling, he would get taken away from me, and I would lose my child, and I would lose my husband because he would never forgive me, and I would lose everyone, and I would lose everything. Rest assured, that's not the case. My health visitor was absolutely amazing, and actually later on we actually reconnected when I had Sarjan, because she actually happens to have a son with Down syndrome, which I didn't know about at that time. So she was really brilliant. She kind of held my hand. She cottoned on to the fact that I wasn't quite feeling right. And actually, I knew that I was kind of susceptible to getting postnatal depression, because I'd had depression after I had my car accident in 2009. So I was very open to it. I wasn't shy, or I wasn't, you know, stubborn or defensive with, you know, talking about perhaps I'm struggling a little bit. She assured me that unless, you know, I was struggling to take care of my child, he wouldn't be taken away from me. I wasn't struggling to take care of him. I was just struggling with how I was feeling, because as time went on, he was getting what he needed from me, but I also had the right support network around me. Just remember that your health visitor is there to support you. You're a team. You work together. The sooner you share your honest feelings, the sooner you can get that help. So I ended up having my health visitor for about 7 weeks, which is longer than the standard. She would come every single week. We worked together. She would set me baby goals, baby tasks to do within the week. So, you know, I remember one of them was take Arjun outside for 10 minutes. So it was, you know, instead of it being this massive thing, how am I going to take this out? How am I going to take that out? It was literally just go outside for 10 minutes with Arjun. And she provided me with constant reassurance. And it was such a huge help to have her support and to have that safe space there, because I could be really open and honest about the way I was feeling. The third thing is sleep is so important for mental health. I cannot stress that enough. So I know it's tempting to get on with the housework and to get on with other bits and bobs while your baby's asleep, but your sleep is so important. And I know that when I hadn't slept well, I was extra snappy, I was extra... my mood was really low. It was lower than usual. I just struggled a lot more. And the same is true of today. If I've had a really poor night's sleep or if I've gone to sleep really late, it impacts my mood and it impacts my productivity. It impacts everything. So Breatham kind of recognized that. So when I was trying to kind of persevere with breastfeeding, he said to me quite early on, Harps, look, you know, there's no pressure. Why don't you perhaps do breastfeeding during the day, and at night I'll do the night feeds, and I'll bottle feed Arjun. And actually I welcome that, because there were some days where Arjun would literally be feeding for hours, and I felt like it just kind of contributed to that whole, is this my life forever? I don't want this to be my life. I'm tired, I'm feeling low, I just want to be, I don't want to be doing this. And, you know, some people might say that's selfish, some people might say it was the wrong decision, some people might agree it was the right decision, but for me, that was absolutely the right decision for us, for my mental health, for my baby, and for our family. So he would do, you know, he would do the night shift and I could sleep during the night. I mean, obviously you still wake up to the sound of a baby crying, but it meant that, you know, I didn't have to kind of get out of bed. And actually, it also gave Breatham the chance to bond with Arjun by bottle feeding him. You know, he'd sit on the rocking chair and they'd just gaze into each other's eyes, and it was so beautiful to watch. Like, I was so grateful that he had that opportunity as well. It's not just about the mum, it's also about the dad, you know, and that was important for me. The fourth thing that I would say is listen to yourself. So again, I know the whole breast is best topic is quite a controversial one, and I'm not saying that breast isn't best, but for me, fed was best. You know, for us, it was basically a choice between breastfeeding my son and, you know, my mood just slipping lower and lower, or, you know, doing combined feeding and Breatham, you know, helping with the feeds and me getting more rest and helping to lift my mood. So, you know, a happier mum for my son. And for us, that was something that was absolutely the right decision for us. And I think it's an incredibly personal choice, and I know so many mums that have, you know, not been able to breastfeed for whatever reason, and they have really beat themselves up over it. And my advice to you would be, please don't. My biggest thing was, he's not going to have a bond with me, he's not going to have a bond with me, I've let him down, I've let him down, I've let him down. And I haven't. He's a happy little boy, and he's still close to me, and yeah, it would have been great if I could have done it for longer, but I couldn't, and I'm at peace with that. I'm okay with that. I don't, you know, I don't beat myself over that, thankfully. Thankfully, my health visitor was really supportive with the whole breastfeeding topic. You know, she agreed that it was our decision, and she kind of supported me in that. So my advice to you would be, listen to your own body, look at your own situation, and decide what the right decision is for you and your baby and for your family. Don't feel pressured, don't beat yourself up, just balance it all out and seriously figure out what the right thing for you is. My fifth piece of advice would be to please make sure you eat. That was one thing I didn't compromise on. It helped that my mum was there literally, you know, over my head, making sure I was eating. Breatham also made sure I was eating. My advice is to keep things like, you know, if you haven't got that support, just easy reach items, even if it's croissants, even if it's bananas, fruit, you know, things that you can pick at. So even if your baby is kind of, you know, having a moment or crying or whatever, it's so important that you eat. It is so important to keep your hormones balanced, to keep your mood balanced. It's such a huge thing. And even without, having a baby, any kind of depression, I'd say meals are really, really important. And I made sure that, I had things like crackers and fruit and, don't skip meals. It will lead to lower energy and a lower mood. My sixth thing would be do something for you. So I didn't do it in the beginning, but it's something that I've learned over time. I think I learned it quite soon after Sergeant, actually. Do something that makes you feel good. So for me, it's, if I'm having a bit of a low mood, I'll put on a little bit of makeup and I'll just feel kind of fresh-faced, and I'll just feel a bit sort of like, okay, I feel good. I feel better. Like, let's do this. Obviously, how I'm feeling internally isn't massively, it doesn't disappear with a little bit of lippy on, but it just helps doing something for me. So, whatever that looks like for you, whether it's doing colouring in, whether it's, going for a walk, whatever it is, a little bit of self-care. And it doesn't have to be anything convoluted or long. It's just a small little thing that just lifts your mood up a little bit. I think people assume that, today I'm completely fine and, I've overcome all the obstacles that we've been faced with, and that's not true. It's not the case. Obviously, everything that we went through with Sergeant was a whole nother roller coaster. For those of you that came to the first Baby Brain Tea and Talk event, you'll know how difficult that journey was, and what a dark place I was in at that time, and literally how much it has taken for me to move away from that. But just because I've moved away from it, it doesn't mean that it's completely gone. There are still things that I do, despite, having had therapy, having been on lots of brilliant courses. There are still things that I need to work on. There's things that nothing could have prepared me for. The whole thing about Sergeant, having a child with an additional need. And some days I really struggle with things in general. I struggle with balance. I had a really bad day today. I've cried loads today. I'm actually feeling really tired right now, but I just felt this whole overwhelming sense of guilt, and it's echoing some of those feelings that I had from even when Arjun was born, not feeling like you're doing enough, feeling like you're spreading yourself so thin, not knowing where your focus should be, not knowing, am I supposed to be pouring my heart into my work? Am I supposed to be pouring my heart into my sons? Am I supposed to be focusing on his EHCP? Am I supposed to be making sure the house is clean? What am I supposed to be doing? And I think today my biggest kind of upset was the fact that, I haven't sat down and homeschooled or, done any kind of learning with Arjun in days. And am I letting my child down? Am I kind of, and it's that constant kind of, that kind of echoing voice, and it's still the same as what was going on when Arjun was born. So there are still demons there. There are still things that I need to work through. So despite, what people's perceptions might be on social media, I'm not always okay. I struggle with expectations. That's something I need to manage. Simple things like we're all at home, who should be doing what, expectations of, in general, that's something that I need to work on. My confidence, believe it or not, I still need to work on my confidence. People assume I'm this really super confident person and, I'm raring to go, and that's not always the case. I'm not always super confident. This is something that I'm really confident with, speaking about my journey. This is probably the thing that I'm most comfortable with. But, on a day-to-day basis, I'm not the most confident person, and it really echoes in the way that I speak to myself. I would never speak to my friends the way that I speak to myself. And that's something that I really need to work on. It's that constant sense of, am I doing enough? If I might say something, oh no, did I say the wrong thing? Or, have I offended someone? I didn't mean to. I wear my heart on my sleeve. So a lot of the time I'll say what I'm thinking or I'm feeling, and I end up, getting myself into a lot of trouble. I often feel overwhelmed. Today was one of those days where I just felt like I was just going to crumble, and it just all got a little bit too much. And it's just learning to cope with those things, you know, just taking a step back. But when I take a step back, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many things that need to be done. So it's just learning to cope with those things. So some of the things that I try and do when I'm feeling like that, even now, today, is I shared a post a little while ago about, you know, meditating and being able to transport myself back to the Golden Temple. That is my safe haven. That's my sanctuary. That's my place of comfort, where I feel peace, where I get a pull to go to. That is my place of comfort. So I obviously can't go there right now. So I've learned to take myself back there, and that's a massive thing for me, because I'm not really, you know, I'm not a natural born meditator, if that's even a word. I'm kind of, you know, quite here and now, and I get quite carried away with, you know, worldly things and just living. And sometimes I forget to just take a step back. So, you know, but again, I've mastered that, but it's making sure that I make the time to do it. You know, even if it's a couple of minutes a day, I need to do it religiously. I've realized that therapy isn't something that you just have as a one-off. It's something that you kind of need to constantly exercise. There's no point. It's like going to the gym, you know, getting in shape, reaching your target weight or your shape, whatever it is, your target fitness, and then thinking, all right, I never have to go to the gym again. It's not going to happen, is it? You kind of need to carry on practicing whatever you've been doing at the gym to maintain that. So that's something that I've learned. I've always known it, but it's really come to head recently, and I've realized that I really, really need to have that kind of constant, I think, lifetime support, whether it's once a month, whether it's just a check-in session. I need that. I need that space for myself to just hold myself accountable, but through someone else, and to just sound off to an independent person. And therapy doesn't always have to be through, you know, a professional. It can also be through friends, through family, wherever you feel safe. For me, I think I need, you know, a little bit more than just family and friends. Another thing is focusing on the silver linings. So my blog is all about the silver linings, even though, you know, we've been through some challenging times. I always try and find silver linings, and I try and share things only after I've found that silver lining, because I want to offer hope. I want to offer, you know, offer some sort of positive outlook, to say that even if you're riding a storm, it is going to be okay. It might not be perfect, but it will be okay. You will, you know, this too shall pass. So even with gratitude, it doesn't have to be anything huge and massive. It can be something really simple. So my favorite one that I always talk about, and you've probably heard it before, is, you know, it can be something simple, like somebody giving me way when we're driving. That will put a smile on my face. Like literally somebody saying thank you, or somebody giving me way. I just think basic human manners are just so underrated. My fifth one would be take a break from social media. It is so important. Literally, when I come off social media, don't get me wrong, I've made some amazing connections, some amazing friends. You guys have carried me through some of my toughest times, and I know we've supported each other. And it's a great place, but it can also be very damaging. And I don't mean what you see, I mean the amount of time you spend on it. You can just mindlessly be scrolling, hours will pass, you won't even know what's happened. And sometimes I'll complain and say, I haven't got enough time. Yeah, I have got time. I've spent an hour just scrolling. It's what you choose to do with your time. So sometimes disconnecting from social media can kind of clear the way for other things in your life. And it's also just really important to give your brain that mental space to just switch off. It was really interesting, actually, one of Preetham's cousins who studies media, she was saying to me, you know, Harps, do you know why you end up, you know, spending so much time on social media? And I said, no, why? And she said, because there's no pages. It's all kind of scrolling. And I was like, oh my God, it's so obvious, but it's so easy to forget that there are no pages. So you're not conscious of what you're doing. You're just scrolling. For what? What are you looking for? What are we looking for? Why are we spending precious moments of our life looking at other people's lives when we could just be living our own? I mean, it's fine when you do it in a controlled way, but I'm one of those people that gets carried away. The next thing is to really hone in on how you feel after spending time with certain people. Do you feel uplifted? Do you feel lower? Do you feel inspired? How do you feel? This is something that Sergeant gave me the strength to do. I really started looking at how, and really reflecting on how I felt after being around other people. And even this includes social media accounts. You know, even if my account is one of those, mute it or unfollow it. If you feel that, you know, seeing something is lowering your vibration or how you're feeling, then just don't look at it. And same goes for people in real life. You know, we've got one shot at living this life. You don't need to, you know, go to an event that you don't want to go to. You don't need to go to a function that you don't want to go to. You don't need to do anything. You don't owe anybody anything. Like, be kind to yourself. That's one thing I've learned to do, is to not force myself to be in spaces that I don't want to be in. And that's something that I'm really proud of myself for doing, because it's taken a lot for me to get there. For me, what really works is listening to kirtan, or some sort of music or something inspirational or religious, or, you know, audiobooks. That works really well for Breatham. He loves audiobooks, and he's started getting me into them. Another thing I learned is don't sweat the small stuff. So when I was ill for 2 weeks, a couple of weeks ago, I was literally up there thinking, oh my God, the house is going to be a mess. It's going to be a mess. And literally I was like, okay, even if it is a mess, it's fine. You know, Breatham's done an amazing job at looking after the boys. He's taken really good care of me. It's fine. I came down, and when I did come down, obviously it wasn't quite how I do things. And I cleaned it, and I realized it took me the same amount of time to clean after 2 weeks as it does to clean after a day. So I've literally just taken a step back. Like, right now the lounge needs a hoover, but I'm not going to do it, because I know tomorrow the boys are going to go in the garden, their muddy shoes are going to come, there's going to be grass everywhere, there's going to be crisps and crumbs and whatnot everywhere anyway. So I'm just going to save myself the hassle, and it takes a lot to step away from that, and I'm not always great at it, but that's something that I learned during those 2 weeks. Another thing is to really check the way you speak to yourself. So this is something that I'm trying to do. I haven't mastered it, but I'm aware of the way I speak to myself. So really think about the language that you're using. So one of the things that I do try and do is limit any negative feelings to this moment or to today. So, you know, and also taking accountability for the way you're feeling. So I'm allowing myself to feel really rubbish today by brooding over X, Y, Z. And I'm putting in the word today. So making sure that you're limiting it to just today, and you're not letting it linger. It's okay to feel crappy sometimes. Like, we all feel crappy sometimes. But it's just kind of limiting how much we give permission to that thought. And again, like I said, be mindful of your company. So I've had quite a few questions, but I'm running out of time, so I might have to do another live to cover those questions. Hopefully some of those have been answered in this live. There's lots of comments. I'm so sorry, I haven't really been able to keep up with them at the same time, but I will read them after. I hope that's been helpful, and I hope you've got a little bit more of an insight into how things are for me. They're not perfect. They're far from perfect. I have my daily battles. There's only so much you can share on social media. Sometimes I don't know how to articulate it. Some things I don't want to share, and some things I just don't have the time to share, or the energy. So I do try and keep it real, but I don't want you to think that, you know, I've only felt this because of Sergeant. No, I felt it long before then, and that this is me. This is the truth, and it is what it is. And we're all wading through this thing called life together. And there's nothing wrong with saying that, you know, sometimes I struggle. But thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you so much for all your love and support always, guys. I'm going to save this to IGTV, and also I'll post it over on YouTube. Thank you, guys. Good night.